Hello, welcome to another episode of The Inclusive Consumer, your favorite podcast covering topics at the forefront of every modern marketer's mind: strategy, social media, content, growth, influencer partnerships, demographic, psychographic, and of course, target marketing. Whether you are a marketing leader or marketing enthusiast, this podcast is for you. I'm Deborah Walton, your podcast host. I'm the founder and managing partner of Inclusion by Design Co., a consulting firm specializing in inclusive strategy, inclusive marketing, and inclusive product consulting to help brands increase their revenue and reach. My pronouns are she and her. I'm an African American woman with brown skin, dark brown curly hair, dark brown eyes, and I'm wearing tan colored glasses, a brown blouse, a pink pearl necklace, and I'm in front of a branded background for the Inclusive Consumer Podcast. It is a pink background with the Inclusive Consumer Podcast logo in the top corner. For those of you unfamiliar with that practice, that is a visual description. I want to ensure that listeners from the blind and low vision communities have an inclusive experience with the podcast, especially when tuning in to enjoy the show on YouTube. As we get started, I want to take a moment and share a land acknowledgement statement. I acknowledge that I am on the ancestral lands of the Cherokee and Shawnee people. I acknowledge these tribes and nations as the rightful and traditional protectors and caretakers of these lands. I encourage you to learn more about the lands that you are currently on and to reflect on your own place in this work. This podcast is titled The Inclusive Consumer. You may be wondering, who is the inclusive consumer? Today's consumers do not buy the first product or service that they come across. The modern consumer is inclusive. They care about their identity and culture and the identities and cultures of others, and expect to see companies not only respecting, but also celebrating the dynamic humanity that is reflected in the modern world. Today's modern consumer is the inclusive consumer. Now let's get started with this podcast episode. Today, our topic is polarizing issues, why they are a good thing for your brand. Let's go ahead and get started. Did you know that a Deloitte study found that more than 2/3 of consumers want companies to become more involved in social and political issues? This was research published by a social media analysis company. If you're unfamiliar with that research, let's double click on the topic of polarizing issues, how you can use them to increase your brand loyalty. So, polarization, if you're not familiar, is the division of two sharply contrasting groups or sets of opinions or beliefs. Think about some polarizing issues that affect us today: climate change, abortion rights, and LGBTQIA+ rights. These are all polarizing issues. Polarization is a good thing for brands because it can be used to connect and captivate your target audience, and it builds brand loyalty. Here's an example. When a brand takes a stand to support women's right to choose, it reinforces with consumers who agree, and it really fosters that value alignment. If a consumer believes in women's right to choose and a brand is taking a stand to support women's right to choose, there's brand and consumer alignment with those values. There is a catch when we think about polarizing issues and how you can use them to increase brand loyalty. When thinking about polarizing issues, they can also backfire in building your brand. It may be profitable for brands to become more engaged in social issues, but if you're doing it in an insincere way, this can lead to accusations of woke washing by using social issues to increase public appeal and revenue. Lying just to say the right thing in the right moment to potentially try to increase the bottom line is harmful to your brand. Consumers are clever. They're really clever enough to discern when a brand is saying one thing and doing another, and this can lead to being canceled. I want to take a moment here and talk about Generation Z. Gen Z is a group of consumers who do not buy from brands without doing due diligence. They're going to do research on what your brand is saying, what you're doing, beyond just the website to look at the actions that you're taking. So when consumers hear or see a campaign or a message or content from a brand, that doesn't necessarily mean they'll take it as face value. They really want to understand if a brand is sincere and authentic in taking positions on different issues. And so they will do research before making a purchase. And we've got a great episode coming up this season where you will hear that directly from a Gen Zer. Now, you think about polarizing issues and how if you say one thing and do another, the bait and switch, you think you can get away with it as a marketer. But consumers today are very informed when they're making purchase decisions, and rightly so. According to Vogue Business, the research phase is crucial for brand trust. 70% of Gen Z and 69% of millennials only trust a brand after carrying out their own research. Now, a lot of marketing leaders I know that are leading brands are really afraid of making a statement about polarizing issues because they assume that it's possible to appeal to everyone. But you can't appeal to everyone. And as a marketing leader and a marketing executive, you shouldn't want to appeal to everyone. You know the old saying, if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one. Every brand should prioritize connecting with one group, their target audience. There's not one brand in this entire world with an effective marketing strategy that should define their target audience as every single person living on the planet with a pulse. That's ineffective. My philosophy on effective marketing is to leverage target marketing for success instead of wasting your time, money, and resources on mass marketing. And this is really something you want to think about as you're revisiting and reviewing your marketing strategy. Let me pause here because a lot of marketers are busy doing and executing, and that's great. You have to execute in order to implement a marketing strategy and plan, but how often are you looking at your marketing strategy? It's a good rule of thumb to revisit your marketing strategy at least once a year to look at what's working, what's not working, and really get a sense for areas and opportunities to improve your marketing strategy. Polarizing issues, with this being a year with a lot of divisive topics and a lot of different social and cultural things happening in society, this is a really great opportunity for your marketing team to huddle, talk through, and brainstorm how you can use polarizing issues to increase brand loyalty. Now, the goal for your brand is not to market to everyone. Mass marketing doesn't work. We know that. The goal for your brand is to captivate your target audience. Polarizing issues can help. Trust me, when you're silent on an issue, that also takes a position. When a social crisis happens, silence communicates your position more strongly than you think it does. Let's talk about an example. We are currently in an anti-DEI movement, and at the time of this recording, there are over 500 anti-LGBTQIA plus bills. When a company doesn't acknowledge support for LGBTQIA plus rights, the silence communicates acceptance of these harmful bills that cause harm to the LGBTQIA plus community. Instead of being silent, taking a stand for LGBTQIA plus rights goes a long way to respect and honor inclusive consumers, your workforce who identify as members, allies, and advocates for the community. And that's a win. That's a win for branding to connect with consumers. It's also a win for employer branding to attract and retain top talent. So, how can brands leverage polarizing issues as a value add to reinforce brand loyalty? Brands can prioritize issues that are most important to their target audience through listening tools like user surveys and social media platforms. When you have data-driven insights to inform your marketing strategy, even how you address polarizing issues, you will be able to strategically position your brand to connect with your most important audience, your target consumers. Now, as we all know, the presidential election is coming up and it's going to be just as polarizing as the last one. So, as you're navigating current and cultural events, keep in mind how you can use polarization to build your value and reinforce value alignment with your target audience. Every target audience should have those segmentations. So even though you might have one group of audience or a couple of different segmentations, you will have different messaging to different groups. But remember, when you take a stand on a polarizing issue, it really needs to reflect the values for your target audience across the board. And so there are ways to do that by being inclusive and taking stand on issues that really honor the humanity and the dignity of people in this world. Now, if you have questions, if you want to learn more, if you want to talk about polarizing issues for your brand, how you can use them to build trust, build brand loyalty, and really connect with inclusive consumers, reach out to us. Go to inclusionbydesignco.com and schedule a free strategy session. If you'd like, you can also get a complimentary website homepage audit or a social media profile audit. Inclusive marketing can be hard to get it right. And most marketing executives that I speak with are not leveraging inclusive marketing because it's hard. There's fear around doing it wrong. And there's this level of being scared to even start or scared to even try. And I've got some good news for you. You don't have to do it alone. My team at Inclusion by Design Co. is ready to help you win the inclusive consumer with the right inclusive marketing strategy for your brand. We look forward to hearing from you. And if you liked this episode of The Inclusive Consumer, please subscribe, write us a positive review, and tell a friend. With that, we will conclude this podcast episode and chat with you in the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in and look forward to connecting with you in the rest of this season. Bye for now.